The reflection in the mirror was always the same. Vincent Thompson adjusted his pure silk Italian tie, his fingers involuntarily brushing over the marks that covered the right side of his face. Those scars, the result of a rare childhood illness, had been his silent companions for 4 decades. The walk-in closet, larger than many apartments, displayed impeccably aligned suits, all custom-made at the most prestigious tailors in the world. Each piece cost more than the annual salary of his employees, yet none had the power to conceal the marks that defined him in the eyes of others. Mr. Thompson, the video conference with the Chinese investors will begin in 5 minutes, his assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. "I'll be there shortly, Eleanor," he replied mechanically, applying another layer of the specially developed concealer from a French laboratory. The triplex penthouse in the heart of the Upper East Side, the most exclusive neighborhood in New York, was both his refuge and his prison. From the 30th floor windows, the city stretched out like a carpet of concrete and glass beneath him. Vincent had conquered every square inch of his empire with iron determination, transforming his father's modest inheritance into a conglomerate that dominated the US real estate market. Sitting at the meeting table in his private office, surrounded by contemporary art screens worth millions, Vincent activated the video conference. The forced smiles of the Chinese executives were familiar, a mix of respect for his economic power and poorly concealed discomfort with his appearance. "Gentlemen, let's discuss the expansion of the complex in Shanghai," he began, maintaining the firm and professional tone he used as armor. The meeting dragged on for 2 hours. Numbers, projections, and strategies were his safe territory. There, shielded by the language of business, no one dared to look too closely at his face or ask inconvenient personal questions. After ending the call, Vincent remained seated, watching the city prepare for nightfall. The lights began to dot the urban landscape, creating an illusion of life and movement that contrasted with the emptiness he felt. "Eleanor, cancel my appointments for the rest of the week," he suddenly decided, pressing the intercom. "But sir, the inauguration of the new development in Beverly Hills—" "Cancel everything," he interrupted, his voice brooking no argument. "And make sure the jet is ready early tomorrow morning. I'll be spending some time at the beach house." The momentary silence on the other end of the line betrayed his assistant's surprise. In 15 years of working for him, Eleanor had rarely seen him take a break. Vincent stood up and walked over to the climate-controlled wine cellar that took up an entire wall. He selected a Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1982, a wine that cost more than a luxury car. He poured himself a generous amount, letting the liquid breathe as he settled into his favorite armchair. His personal phone vibrated. It was Sophia, his latest attempt at a relationship, which had ended 3 months ago. The message was predictable. She was sorry she missed him. Money didn't matter. But Vincent knew the truth. He had overheard her conversation with her friends at that party when they thought he wasn't around. "It's like kissing a modern art piece. You pretend to like it because it's worth millions," Sophia had said, drawing laughter from the others. Vincent blocked the number without responding. He was tired of this endless cycle of shallow relationships, where his wealth always weighed more than his person. The only people who showed any genuine affection for him were his longtime employees like Eleanor. And even then, he always wondered how much of that affection was sincere and how much was motivated by the generous salary he paid. Finishing his glass of wine, he made a decision. Changing the scenery wasn't enough. He needed to change his life, even if only temporarily. His beach house in Malibu would be just the first stop. After that, well, he'd figure it out. For the first time in years, Vincent Thompson, the man who controlled every aspect of his life with surgical precision, decided it was time to allow himself a little unpredictability. Night fell over New York, and with it, a different feeling took hold of Vincent. It wasn't exactly hope. He had long abandoned that word, but perhaps it was something close to possibility. Tomorrow would be a new day, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't know exactly what that day had in store for him. The trip to Malibu was just the beginning. After 3 days contemplating the ocean from the balcony of his coastal mansion, Vincent realized that even there he was surrounded by the symbols of his wealth. The same looks, the same shallow conversations with neighbors who pretended not to notice his scars, while trying to impress him with their far less significant material achievements. It was during a particularly intense sunset that he made his decision. He called Richard, his lawyer and only friend from college. "I need you to temporarily take over the group," he said, without preamble. "You have my power of attorney and know all the processes. Vincent, are you okay?" The concern in Richard's voice was genuine. "This isn't like you." "I'm better than I've been in years," he replied, surprising himself with the sincerity of the statement. "I need some time, Richard. Time to just be myself." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Richard responded, "You know you can count on me. But where are you going?" "It's better if you don't know. The fewer people who know, the better. I'll keep in touch through a new number which only you and Eleanor will have." In the following days, Vincent meticulously organized his departure. He instructed Eleanor to maintain a facade of normalcy, as if he were just working remotely. Richard would handle the most important decisions for the group, and the rest could wait. On a Thursday morning, Vincent boarded a commercial flight to Rome, something he hadn't done in decades. Dressed in simple clothes bought at a Malibu mall without his usual collection of designer accessories, he felt strangely light. His only concession to luxury was the first-class ticket. Some changes needed to be gradual. During the flight, he observed his cabin companions, an elderly couple celebrating their golden anniversary, an executive absorbed in his laptop, a mother with a young child who kept staring at his face with that typical childhood curiosity. To his surprise, the girl's gaze didn't bother him as much as he had expected. "Why does your face look like that?" asked the little girl, ignoring her mother's attempts to hush her. Vincent smiled, something rare for him. "Because each of us is different, little one. Some differences are just more visible than others, that's all." The answer seemed to satisfy the girl's curiosity, and she soon turned her attention back to the tablet playing cartoons. The mother, after a moment of embarrassment, engaged Vincent in a surprisingly pleasant conversation about his experiences traveling with children. Upon arriving in Rome, he didn't head to the luxury hotels he usually frequented. Instead, he rented a modest car and drove south toward the Amalfi Coast. He had extensively researched small seaside villages, places where he could blend in with the locals without drawing too much attention. After a few hours of driving, he reached Positano, a town clinging to the cliffs of the coast. The narrow, steep streets, the colorful houses cascading down to the sea, everything exuded a simplicity that drew him in. But it wasn't where he intended to stay. He continued driving until he reached a smaller, less touristy village. Priano was his final destination, a place where traditions still prevailed over mass tourism, where fishermen still went out every morning in their boats, and where time seemed to flow at a different pace. He found a small inn run by an elderly woman, Sophia, who spoke broken but sufficient English to communicate. The room was simple but clean and cozy, with a small balcony offering a privileged view of the Mediterranean Sea. "How long will the signore stay?" asked Sophia, as she helped him with the single suitcase he had brought. "I don't know yet," he answered honestly. "I'm searching for something, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet." The woman smiled with understanding. "Ah, many come here searching for something. The sea has that effect on people. It cleanses the soul." On that first night in Priano, Vincent sat on the balcony of his room, watching the lights of fishing boats dotting the dark horizon. The salty sea air carried with it a sense of possibility that he hadn't felt in a long time. There, in that small corner of the world, he wasn't the billionaire Vincent Thompson. He was just Vincent, a man with visible scars trying to heal the invisible ones. Before going to sleep, he sent a short message to Richard. "I arrived safely. Don't worry about me." Then, he turned off his phone and placed it in the nightstand. Tomorrow would be his first day of a temporarily ordinary life, and for the first time in decades, he was eager to discover what fate had in store for him. The first rays of sunlight found Vincent walking through the narrow streets of Priano. The aroma of fresh bread and freshly brewed coffee led him to a small cafe overlooking the sea. "Artisan Cafe," read the weathered sign, hand-painted in shades of blue and gold. The establishment was simple but welcoming. Old wooden tables were scattered throughout the interior, and the small terrace that overlooked the sea. The slightly peeling walls displayed paintings of various sizes and styles, local landscapes, portraits of fishermen, and scenes of village life. "Buongiorno," a melodious voice greeted him in Italian. Vincent turned and met a pair of green eyes that, for the first time in a long while, didn't look away upon noticing his scars. "Good morning," he replied in Portuguese, surprised to see the waitress smile even more broadly. "Brazilian?" she asked, also in Portuguese. "What a coincidence. I'm Marina." Vincent observed her with curiosity. Marina appeared to be in her early 30s, her brown hair carelessly tied up in a bun, a few rebellious strands framing her face. She wore an apron over a simple t-shirt and jeans, but there was something in her posture that suggested a natural elegance. "Vincent," he introduced himself, deliberately choosing not to use his well-known last name. "I didn't expect to meet a Brazilian here." "Life takes us down interesting paths," she replied, guiding him to a table on the balcony. "I came to Italy 2 years ago to study art. I ended up staying." As Marina walked away to fetch the menu, Vincent noticed a small sketch pad on the counter. It was open to a page showing an unfinished sketch of the sea as seen from that same balcony. "Is this yours?" he asked when she returned. Marina blushed slightly. "Ah yes, I sketch in my spare moments. The cafe owner, Mr. Joseph, allows it as long as I keep the customers' cups full." She laughed, a genuine sound that made Vincent smile too. "They're very good," he commented, flipping through the previous pages to see other sketches. "Did you study art formally?" A shadow crossed her face. "I tried. I came here with a partial scholarship to the Academy of Fine Arts in Naples, but things didn't go as planned. Now I work here and draw when I can." Vincent ordered a cappuccino and a cornetto, more interested in Marina's story than in the breakfast itself. There was something magnetic about her presence, an authenticity that contrasted with the artificial environment he was accustomed to. Over the next few hours, as other customers came and went, Vincent remained at his table, ordering more coffee than he could drink, just to keep the conversation with Marina going during the moments she could stop by his table. "May I sketch you?" she asked suddenly during one of her breaks. "There's something about how the morning light touches your profile. It would make an interesting study." Vincent tensed instantly. No one had ever asked to portray him. On the contrary, people usually avoided looking at his face for too long. "My scars," he began, but Marina gently interrupted him. "They're part of who you are. Art doesn't seek perfection, Vincent. It seeks truth." Something in the way she said it, without pity or judgment, made him nod. Marina sat for a few minutes, her pencil dancing across the paper, with quick, confident strokes. Vincent watched her expressions as she drew, the way she lightly bit her lower lip when concentrating, how her eyes alternated between the paper and his face without hesitation. "Done," she said finally, turning the sketchpad so he could see. Vincent held his breath. The drawing was simple, done only in graphite, but there was a dignity in the way Marina had portrayed him. His scars were there, but they weren't the focus of the composition. They were just another element that made up the whole, as natural as the lines around his eyes or the curve of his chin. Can I keep it?" he asked, his voice rougher than usual. Marina smiled, carefully tearing the page from the notepad. "Of course. Consider it a welcome gift to Priano." As the sun began to set, Vincent realized he had spent the entire day at the cafe. Other customers had noticed his scars, of course, but for the first time in his life, it didn't seem to matter. What mattered were the stolen moments of conversation with Marina between her tasks, the way she spoke about art with passion, how her eyes sparkled when she described the colors of the sea at different times of the day. As he prepared to leave, Vincent hesitated. "Do you come here every day?" "Except on Sundays," she replied, wiping a nearby table. "The cafe is my second studio." "Then I guess I found my favorite spot for breakfast," he said, surprising himself with the ease of the flirtation. Marina smiled, and in that smile was a promise of other sunrises, other conversations, other sketches. Vincent left the artisan cafe feeling something he hadn't experienced in so long that he had almost forgotten what it was like: hope. The following weeks established a routine Vincent had never imagined for himself. Every morning, promptly at 8, he would sit at the same table on the cafe's terrace. Marina already had his cappuccino ready before he even ordered, and gradually, their conversations deepened, revealing layers they both had carefully hidden from the rest of the world. "Why Italy?" he asked one particularly clear morning, as Marina arranged some gelato containers on the counter. She paused for a moment, and Vincent realized he had touched on something delicate. "My mother was an art restorer," Marina began, sitting down for a moment. "She raised me alone, working in museums all over the United States. I grew up surrounded by old canvases and the smell of oil paint. When she..." Marina hesitated. "When she left 3 years ago, I found an old diary of hers. It was full of drawings of the Amalfi Coast and letters never sent to an art school in Naples. It was her dream, to study here." Vincent noticed how Marina's eyes slightly welled up. "So, you decided to fulfill her dream?" "Not exactly." She smiled, discreetly wiping away a tear. "I decided to fulfill my own dream, but in the place where hers began. I sold everything we had in the United States, got a partial scholarship, and came here. I thought it would be easy to work and study at the same time, but reality was different," Vincent completed, understanding. "The money ran out faster than expected. I had to choose between paying rent or continuing at the academy. I found this cafe by chance when I was about to give up and return to the United States. Mr. Joseph not only offered me the job, but also the small room at the back of the cafe. He said I could stay until I got better settled." Vincent felt a tightness in his chest, thinking about how much money he spent on frivolous things, while talents like Marina's were wasted due to lack of resources. But something in her expression stopped him from offering financial help. There was dignity in the way she spoke about her situation, without self-pity or bitterness. "And your drawings?" he asked instead. "I saw that you have much more beyond those in the sketchbook." Marina's face lit up. "Do you want to see?" "They're in my bedroom studio. I can show you after my shift if you'd like." That afternoon, Vincent discovered the small space Marina had transformed into her private universe. The room was tiny, but every inch of the walls was covered with canvases and sketches, landscapes of the coast, portraits of cafe patrons, studies of light and shadow that captured the essence of Praiano. "This is my favorite," she said, pulling a larger canvas from behind some others. It was a painting of the harbor at dawn, with fishing boats returning under a golden light that seemed to emanate from the canvas itself. "It's extraordinary," Vincent murmured, genuinely impressed. "You have a rare gift, Marina." "But not rare enough for the galleries," she laughed, though there was a note of sadness in her voice. "I've tried to exhibit in a few places, but they say my work is too traditional, not commercial enough." Vincent wanted to say that he knew owners of the top art galleries in the world, that he could make a few calls and change all of that. But something stopped him. He didn't want Marina to see him differently, didn't want money to interfere with the purity of what they were building. "Sometimes," she said, sitting on the small bed that occupied one corner of the room, "I think I'm being foolish, that I should accept that some dreams are just dreams." "No," Vincent replied firmly, surprising them both with the intensity in his voice. "Your dreams are your truth, Marina, and your art. Your art speaks to people. It speaks to me." She looked at him differently then, as if truly seeing him for the first time. "You know what's funny? Ever since you started coming to the cafe, I've been drawing more. It's as if your presence awakens something in me that had been dormant." Vincent felt his heart race. There was a growing intimacy between them that both frightened and attracted him. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. No pretenses, no hidden agendas, just two people sharing parts of themselves they usually kept hidden. "Can I tell you a secret?" he asked, feeling it was time to start revealing a bit of his own truth. "I've also been living a kind of dream here. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can just be myself." Marina smiled, that smile that had already become his anchor in Praiano. "So we're both dreamers," she said, reaching out and, in a gesture of courage that surprised him, lightly touching the scars on his face. Two dreamers trying to find their place in the world. At that moment, with the afternoon sun streaming through the small window of the studio bedroom and the distant sound of the waves, Vincent felt that perhaps, just perhaps, his place in the world was beginning to reveal itself. The morning started differently at the Artisan Cafe. Vincent noticed it as soon as he walked in and saw Marina chatting animatedly with a young woman who had a professional camera hanging around her neck. His senses, sharpened by years of dealing with the press, immediately sounded an internal alarm. "Vincent," Marina called to him with her usual enthusiasm, "I want you to meet Lucia, my friend from art school days. She's a photojournalist now." Lucia extended her hand with a professional smile that Vincent knew all too well. It was the same one he saw on journalists right before they asked uncomfortable questions. "È un piacere," she said in Italian, her eyes studying his face with undisguised interest. "The pleasure is mine," Vincent replied in perfect Italian, surprising both of them. Marina didn't know, but he had studied in Milan during his youth. During breakfast, Vincent was more reserved than usual, observing the interaction between the friends. Lucia occasionally took photos of the coffee, the customers, the view of the sea. "For a personal project," she explained, but Vincent noticed how the camera often pointed in his direction. "Marina told me you're also American," Lucia commented casually. "What brings you to Praiano?" "Sometimes we need a break from life," he replied vaguely, years of experience with the press evident in his diplomatic response. Later, when Lucia went out to take some photos of the harbor, Marina sat with Vincent during his break. "Sorry if she seemed too curious," she said. "Lucia has always been like that, especially since she started working in investigative journalism." Vincent felt a knot in his stomach. "Investigative journalism?" "Yes, she works for some important magazines in the United States," Marina explained with evident pride for her friend. "She started covering art and culture, but now she writes about businessmen and—" Marina's voice trailed off as she noticed the change in Vincent's expression. "Is something wrong?" Vincent took a deep breath, knowing he needed to make a decision. At that moment, over the past 2 months, he had built something precious with Marina, a connection based on who he was, not what he owned. But now his past was threatening to catch up with him. "Marina," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I need to tell you something about me, something I've been putting off because I'm afraid of how it might change things between us." Marina leaned across the table, her green eyes fixed on him with a mix of concern and curiosity. "You can tell me anything, Vincent, you know that." "I'm not just a tourist taking some vacation time," he said. "Actually, But before he could continue, Mr. Joseph hurriedly appeared on the balcony. "Marina, look at this!" he exclaimed, holding up his tablet. On the screen, a news headline in Italian caught their attention. "American tycoon Vincent Thompson vanishes from public view. Speculations about a possible crisis in his real estate empire." Marina's eyes shifted between the photo on the tablet. Vincent, in one of his expensive suits at a press conference, and the man sitting in front of her in simple clothes. Understanding slowly dawned on her face. Are you him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Vincent replied, feeling as though an enormous weight was simultaneously lifted and added to his shoulders. "It's me." Mr. Joseph, sensing the tension in the air, discreetly withdrew. Marina remained silent for a long moment, her gaze, now different, not with the admiration or greed Vincent was used to seeing when people discovered his true identity, but with a complex mix of emotions he couldn't decipher. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked. "Because for the first time in my life, someone saw me for who I am, not for what I have," he answered, his voice heavy with emotion. "With you, I could just be Vincent, the man with scars who enjoys coffee and watching you draw. Not the billionaire, not the businessman, not the newspaper headline." Marina stood up abruptly, her hands trembling slightly. I need to process this," she said. "Please give me some time." Vincent watched her walk away toward the cafe's kitchen, his heart heavy. Through the window, he saw Lucia returning from the harbor, her camera in hand. and he knew his bubble of anonymity was about to burst completely. He stood up, leaving a generous tip on the table, a habit he had tried to control in recent weeks, to avoid drawing attention. Now it no longer mattered. As he walked back to the inn, he felt the weight of his two worlds colliding. The question now was, would there be room for Marina in his reality, or had he inadvertently destroyed the only genuine thing he had found in years? The following days were a whirlwind. News of Vincent Thompson's presence in Priano spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the small Italian village found itself overrun by photographers and journalists, all eager to capture images of the reclusive billionaire who had chosen this unlikely place as his refuge. Vincent watched it all from his balcony at the inn, which now felt more like a self-imposed prison. Eleanor, the owner, had become a fierce guardian of his privacy, shooing away reporters with a ferocity that was surprising for someone her age. "Don't worry, signore," she said in her broken English. "They'll tire soon, they always do." But it wasn't the journalists Vincent was worried about. He hadn't seen Marina in 3 days. The artisan cafe, his sanctuary for the past few weeks, was now surrounded by paparazzi. Mr. Joseph had even put up a reserved for regular customers sign to try to control the situation. On the afternoon of the 4th day, his phone, the one he kept turned off in the drawer, vibrated with a message from Richard. "The group's stocks have dropped 3% since the news started circulating. The board is nervous. We need a statement from you, Vincent." He tossed the phone onto the bed, frustrated. His former world, the one he had tried to leave behind temporarily, was once again demanding his attention, but now there was something more important at stake. That's when he heard soft knocks at his door. Sophia usually announced visitors through the intercom, so this was unusual. When he opened it, his heart leapt. It was Marina. She looked different, her hair down, wearing a simple dress instead of the cafe uniform, a folder of drawings under her arm. She seemed to have slept little, but her eyes held that determination he so admired. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice firmer than he expected. Vincent nodded, stepping aside to let her in. Marina walked to the balcony, ignoring the spectacular view to focus on him. "I've spent the last few days thinking," she began. "About us, about truth, about art." She opened the folder she was carrying, revealing dozens of drawings, all of him. Some were from moments at the cafe, others seemed to be done from memory. In each one, Vincent saw how Marina truly saw him. "You know what I realized looking at these drawings?" she continued. "In none of them are you the billionaire Vincent Thompson. In all of them, you are just Vincent, the man I met at the cafe. And that made me wonder, who was being more genuine? You hiding your identity or me seeing beyond it without even knowing?" Vincent felt his defenses begin to crumble. "Marina, I'm not done," she gently interrupted. "Lucia told me everything about you, about your empire, your achievements, your past relationships. She even showed me the estimated value of your fortune." Vincent closed his eyes, bracing himself for what always happened when people found out about his wealth. But what Marina said next completely caught him off guard. "And do you know what I did with all that information? Nothing. Because the man described in those articles isn't the same one who spends hours watching me draw, who knows the names of all the colors I use, who understands the value of a shared moment of silence." She stepped closer, gently touching his face, his scars. "But now I need to know, who are you really, Vincent? The man from the cafe or the tycoon from the newspapers?" "I don't know anymore," he admitted, his voice hoarse with emotion. "For the past few years, I've been playing a role that everyone expects of me. Here with you, for the first time in a long time, I felt real." Marina smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "Then we have a problem. Because I can't fall in love with an illusion, Vincent. I can't fall in love with just half of who you are." The word fall in love made Vincent's heart race. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, I need to know Vincent Thompson in his entirety, the man from the cafe and the billionaire, his scars and his successes, his fears and his achievements, everything." Vincent felt the weight of those words. It was a fair request, but also terrifying. Showing himself completely meant risking losing the only person who had seen beyond the surface. "What if you don't like what you see?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marina picked up one of the drawings, the first portrait she had made of him at the cafe. See how I drew your scars? Not as flaws, but as part of who you are. That's how I want to know you, Vincent, completely unedited, without masks. At that moment, with the sun setting over the Mediterranean and the distant sound of photographers below, Vincent Thompson made a decision that would change his life forever. It was time to let someone see beyond the scars, beyond the fortune, beyond the headlines. It was time to be truly seen. The cover of Vogue Italia featured a candid shot of Vincent and Marina walking along the beach at sunset. "The Billionaire and the Artist, a modern fairy tale," the headline announced in elegant letters. What the photo didn't show were the dozens of photographers hidden behind the rocks, the curious glances of the locals, the incessant calls from publicists and concerned family members. "So I can't believe they've turned our lives into a soap opera," Marina sighed, slamming the magazine shut as she settled onto the small sofa in the apartment Vincent had rented in Praiano, a concession to the need for more privacy than the inn could no longer provide. "Welcome to my world," replied Vincent, serving 2 cups of coffee he had prepared himself, a habit he developed since his visits to the Artisan Cafe became impossible due to the media harassment. Marina picked up her cup, observing the dark liquid with a melancholic smile. "I miss Mr. Joseph's coffee. I miss normalcy." "I'm sorry," Vincent began, but Marina interrupted him. "Don't apologize. It was my choice to stay, remember? Besides," she hesitated, a soft blush coloring her cheeks, "it's worth it." Vincent sat beside her, admiring how she managed to maintain her authenticity even amidst the chaos her life had become. In recent weeks, Marina had faced more challenges than he would have liked. Reporters digging into her past, malicious speculations about her intentions, even former classmates from the art academy coming forward with fabricated stories about her. "I received an interesting email today," Marina said, changing the subject. "A gallery in Milan wants to exhibit my work." Vincent raised his eyebrows, surprised. "That's wonderful." "It is." Marina bit her lip, a gesture he already knew as a sign of worry. "But I can't help wondering if it's because of my art or because of you." The question hung in the air between them, heavy as lead. It was the same dilemma Vincent had faced throughout his adult life, never knowing if opportunities and relationships were genuine or motivated by his wealth. "Show me the pieces you want to exhibit," he asked, trying to distract her from those thoughts. Marina reached for her sketchbook, now a constant companion, her way of processing everything that was happening. The new works were different, more intense, more emotional. There was a self-portrait of her reflected in a storefront, her face overlaid with newspaper headlines, a study of the village of Praiano seen through the distorted lens of a camera, and of course several portraits of Vincent, each capturing a different aspect of his personality. "Your art is even more impressive," he commented, genuinely admiring. "The gallery would be foolish not to exhibit this, regardless of who you're dating." Marina smiled at the word dating. It was still strange to think she was in a relationship with one of the wealthiest men in the world. "You know what's funny? Before I used to draw to escape reality. Now I draw to try to understand it better." Vincent's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Richard. "The board is demanding your presence in New York next week," his friend informed him bluntly. "I can't delay this any longer, Vincent." After hanging up, Vincent looked at Marina with apprehension. It was the first time he would need to return to his previous life since everything began. "You need to go," she said, reading his expression. "Come with me." The words came out before he could think too much about them. Marina's eyes widened. "To New York? To your world?" "To our world," he corrected gently. "I don't want to compartmentalize my life anymore." "You said you wanted to." "Know Vincent Thompson in full, remember?" "Well, this is an important part of who I am." Marina stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the sea. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that she would normally rush to capture in her sketchbook. But now, she had a more important decision to make. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "Scared of losing myself in your world, scared of becoming just another accessory in your life of luxury. scared that what we have here won't survive there. Vincent stood up and embraced her from behind, both of them gazing at the horizon. I'm scared too, he confessed. Scared that you'll see all that circus and decide it's not worth it. Scared that the world will try to turn something pure into just another spectacle. But do you know what I'm most afraid of? Marina turned in his arms, facing him. Of what? Of not trying, of letting fear win, of losing the one person who truly sees me because I didn't have the courage to face all these challenges together. Marina was silent for a long moment, her green eyes studying every detail of Vincent's face, including the scars that were now just another part of the man she loved. All right, she finally said. Let's go to New York, but on one condition. What is it? That you promise to always be the man who makes coffee for me, even while wearing your Italian suits. Vincent smiled, feeling his heart grow lighter. I promise. And you? Do you promise to keep drawing me even when you're too busy being the new sensation in the art world? Marina laughed, but her eyes were serious. I promise. I'll always see you, Vincent. Always. The private jet landed at LaGuardia Airport on a Monday morning. Marina gazed out the window at the city stretching endlessly before her, so different from the quiet Praiano. Vincent, now dressed in one of his impeccable Armani suits, held her hand tightly as if fearing she might disappear at any moment. Ready? He asked as the plane's stairs were positioned. No, Marina answered honestly, adjusting the strap of her canvas bag, which contrasted dramatically with the Louis Vuitton luggage Vincent's assistant had sent to Italy. But let's go. The impact was immediate. As soon as they stepped onto the tarmac, they were met with a wall of camera flashes. Burly security guards formed a protective cordon around them, guiding them to a waiting limousine. How do you handle this? Marina asked, already inside the car, her heart still racing. How you get used to it, Vincent replied, but there was a note of sadness in his voice that didn't escape her notice. The limousine wound its way through the city until it reached the building housing the headquarters of the Thompson Group. Marina felt her stomach churn as she saw the imposing glass and steel tower that seemed to touch the clouds. Mr. Thompson, welcome back, an elegant woman greeted them in the lobby. I'm Carmen, the new head of public relations for the group. If I may, we've prepared a full schedule for Miss Marina. Schedule? Marina raised an eyebrow. Yes, of course. We have an image consultant booked this afternoon, followed by a shopping session on Rodeo Drive. Tomorrow, an exclusive interview for Vogue United States and... No, Vincent interrupted, his voice sharp. Marina is not a public relations project. Carmen, she's my girlfriend. An awkward silence settled in the lobby. Carmen cleared her throat, visibly uncomfortable. Of course, sir, my apologies. It's just that the board suggested... The board doesn't get to decide my personal life, Vincent stated. Marina is a talented and successful artist on her own merit. She doesn't need to be produced for anyone. Marina squeezed his hand in silent gratitude, but she could feel the stares of the employees passing by, some curious, others clearly critical of her simple appearance and casual clothes. In the panoramic elevator on the way to Vincent's office, she finally voiced what she was feeling. They see me as an intruder. Vincent sighed. They don't know you yet. They don't know you're the most authentic and talented person I've ever met. The meeting with Richard was a momentary relief. The lawyer had a genuine smile and kind eyes that immediately made Marina feel more at ease. So you're the famous artist who stole my friend's heart, he joked. I've seen some of your work online. It's extraordinary. Thank you, Marina smiled, feeling a bit more confident. The meeting with the board, however, was another story. 12 men in expensive suits stared at Vincent as if he had lost his mind, while they discussed the drop in stock prices and the need for a more traditional positioning for the company. Perhaps it's time to consider a strategic marriage, suggested one of the board members, casting a meaningful glance at Marina, who was sitting in a corner of the room, doodling in her sketch pad as a way to cope with her anxiety. Vincent stood up abruptly, his hands resting on the mahogany table. Gentlemen, let me make something very clear. My personal life is not up for discussion. The stocks dropped because you allowed rumors about my absence to affect market confidence. Now I'm back, and we will focus on what matters, our projects and results. Later at Vincent's apartment, an impressive duplex overlooking Central Park, Marina watched the illuminated city through the window while he finished some important calls. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, approaching her after ending the last call. "About how different our worlds are," she replied, showing him the drawing she had made during the board meeting. 12 shadowy figures around a table, their forms distorted as in an expressionist painting, with Vincent at the center, an island of color amidst the monochrome. "That's the problem," Vincent said, studying the drawing. "You see art, where they only see numbers. You see souls, where they see social positions." "And you?" Marina asked, turning to face him. "What do you see?" Vincent gently touched her face. "I see the possibility of uniting these worlds, of bringing a bit of your light into this corporate universe, and perhaps using a bit of my power to help artists like you have their voices heard." Marina smiled, but there was concern in her eyes. "I don't want you to have trouble because of me. Those men at the meeting, they are very well-paid employees who work for me, not the other way around," Vincent interrupted. "Besides, I have a surprise for you." He led her to a room she hadn't yet explored in the apartment. When he opened the door, Marina was speechless. It was a fully equipped art studio with floor-to-ceiling windows offering perfect natural light, professional, easels and all the paints and materials she could dream of. "So you never feel lost in this world," Vincent explained. "This is your space, your sanctuary." Marina turned slowly, taking in every detail of the studio, silent tears streaming down her face. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Like you," Vincent replied, pulling her into a kiss. That night, as the city pulsed outside, two worlds began to slowly intertwine, not without tensions or challenges, but with the promise of something new and extraordinary born from this unlikely encounter. The vernissage of Marina's first solo exhibition in New York was packed. The prestigious Luminance Gallery, in the heart of the Upper East Side, gathered the crème de la crème of New York society, renowned art critics, and of course dozens of photographers. Marina's works, a series of paintings and drawings documenting her journey with Vincent from the Amalfi Coast to New York, drew curious glances and whispered comments. "It's impressive how she manages to capture the essence of his scars without making them the centerpiece," remarked an influential critic, studying one of Vincent's portraits. "Do you think she really painted this?" "I heard he hired famous artists to help her," murmured a socialite to her friend, loud enough for Marina to hear as she passed by. Vincent, impeccable in his navy blue suit, stood by Marina's side, who had insisted on wearing a simple cotton dress she had bought in Praiano, much to the dismay of Carmen and her public relations team. "You look beautiful," he whispered in her ear, noticing how she tensed with each new group of people approaching with calculated smiles and rehearsed questions. "Half of these people aren't even looking at the artwork," Marina muttered through her teeth, maintaining a polite smile. "They're more interested in gossiping about us." As if to prove her point, a reporter from a celebrity magazine approached, microphone in hand. "Marina, is it true that you and Vincent are planning a wedding on the Amalfi Coast?" Sources close to the couple claimed the engagement ring cost over $5 million. Before Marina could respond, Richard appeared, stepping in diplomatically. "I'm sorry, but the guest artists would like to speak with Marina about her technique." On the other side of the gallery, a group of true art enthusiasts was animatedly discussing the exhibited works. Marina immediately felt more at ease among them, finally able to talk about her work rather than her personal life. "Your approach to light and shadow is fascinating," commented a veteran artist, "especially in this series about Praiano." Marina became engrossed in the artistic discussion. Vincent was approached by Frederick Almeida, one of the most influential members of the board. "Vincent, we need to talk," he said in a low voice. "In private." Reluctant to leave Marina, but sensing the urgency in the board member's tone, Vincent followed him to a quieter corner of the gallery. "The board is concerned," Frederick began. "Your public image has changed drastically in recent months. First, the sudden disappearance. Now this unexpected romance. The investors are nervous." The company's numbers are still excellent. Vincent countered. It's not about numbers, it's about perception. Marina is a lovely girl, but... Frederick hesitated. She doesn't know our world, Vincent. Have you seen how the press is portraying her? The waitress who won over the billionaire. This affects the group's credibility. I don't care what the press says, Vincent cut in, his voice icy. You should care. We have important projects underway, international partnerships at stake. We need you to be seen with people from our circle, to attend the right events, to pretend to be someone I'm not, Vincent interrupted. I've done that for far too long, Frederick. Across the gallery, Marina watched the tense interaction, her heart heavy. Nearby, two women were chatting, unaware of her presence. She's pretty, but so... simple. Did you see how she dresses? How she speaks? She has no idea about etiquette. I give it 6 months before he gets tired. Men like Vincent Thompson need women who understand their world. Marina felt her hands tremble. Leaving the group of artists, she headed to the small office at the back of the gallery, needing a moment alone. There she found her sketchpad and began scribbling frantically, trying to process her emotions through art, as she always did. Vincent found her minutes later, concerned about her sudden absence. Hey, he said softly, noticing her teary eyes. What happened? Marina showed the drawing she had just made. A woman, herself, in a simple dress, surrounded by shapeless shadows that seemed to want to swallow her whole. I don't know if I can do this, Vincent, she admitted in a low voice. I don't know if I'm strong enough to face all of this every day. Vincent sat down beside her, taking her hands in his. Marina, look at me. When she raised her eyes, he continued. For years, I lived surrounded by people who only saw my money, who pretended not to notice my scars, who measured every word and gesture based on what they could gain from me. Then, you came along with your honest drawings and your open heart, and for the first time I felt truly alive. But your world, my world needs to change, not you, he declared firmly. And if some people can't accept that, that's their problem. Marina took a deep breath, looking at her drawing. I'm afraid of making you lose everything you've built. Vincent picked up the sketchpad, flipping to a blank page. You know what I see when I look at a blank page? Possibilities, like you taught me in Praiano. We don't have to follow the script others wrote for us. We can create our own story. Vincent's decision took everyone by surprise. At an extraordinary board meeting, he stood before the stunned executives and announced his intentions. Gentlemen, over the past 15 years, we've transformed the Thompson Group into one of the largest companies in the country. We've built skyscrapers, reshaped the urban landscape, multiplied fortunes. But in the process, we've forgotten something fundamental: the purpose behind it all. The board members exchanged confused glances. Richard, seated next to Vincent, smiled discreetly, already knowing what was coming next. Starting today, 20% of the group's profits will be allocated to a new foundation. The New Perspectives Foundation will aim to support independent artists and fund art therapy programs for people with visible marks, whether physical or emotional. Frederick Almeida stood up, red with indignation. This is absurd. The shareholders will never approve. The shareholders have no choice, Vincent interrupted calmly. As the majority shareholder, I've already made my decision. And furthermore, Marina will be the artistic director of the foundation. The murmurs in the room were cut short by Marina's unexpected arrival. She entered carrying a covered canvas, wearing an executive suit for the first time, though she had added her personal touch with a hand-painted colorful scarf. Sorry for the interruption, she said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. But I thought this would be the perfect moment to reveal my latest work. Under the curious gazes of those present, Marina removed the cloth covering the canvas. The silence that followed was deafening. The painting depicted the meeting room of the Thompson Group, but not as it was, rather as it could be. The austere mahogany walls had been transformed into vibrant murals. The windows, once covered by heavy blinds, now let in an abundance of light. And around the table, where executives in identical suits usually sat, Marina had portrayed a diverse group of people: artists, students, dreamers. At the center of the composition, Vincent appeared without his usual suit. his scars visible and beautiful under the natural light, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "This," Marina said, her voice choked with emotion, "is my vision for the New Perspectives Foundation, a place where art and business are not opposites but complementary, where scars are not hidden but celebrated as part of our history, where success is not measured solely by numbers but by the positive impact we make on people's lives." Vincent approached, taking her hand. "And this," he continued, "is my vision of the future, not just for the company, but for us." Before the still stunned board members, Vincent knelt. There was no $5 million ring, no grand gestures. Just a man laying bare his heart and his scars before the woman who had taught him to love both. "Marina," he said, "you showed me that there is beauty in imperfections, art in the everyday, and love in the most unexpected places. Will you marry me?" Marina smiled through her tears, reaching for her inseparable sketchpad. She flipped through it until she found that first portrait she had drawn of him at the artisan cafe, now slightly crumpled from being stored and revisited so often. "Did you know I kept this drawing because it was the first time I managed to capture someone exactly as I saw them? Not the scars, not the defensive posture, but the kind soul behind it all. Yes, Vincent, I want to build our future together, one portrait at a time." The wedding took place 6 months later, not in Italy as the magazines had speculated, but at the Artisan Cafe in Praiano. Mr. Joseph closed the cafe for an entire day, something he had never done in 30 years of operation. Sophia from the inn cried throughout the entire ceremony. Lucia captured everything with her camera, this time as a friend, not as a journalist. The New Perspectives Foundation became an unexpected success. Emerging artists found not only financial support there, but also mentorship and space to create. The art therapy program helped hundreds of people rediscover their inner beauty. And to the surprise of skeptics, Mendonça Group's stock rose when the market recognized the value of genuine social responsibility. Marina continued to draw Vincent every day. In her portraits, the scars gradually transformed, no longer marks of isolation, but symbols of a journey of self-discovery and love. And Vincent? He finally understood that his true wealth wasn't in his skyscrapers or bank accounts, but in the ability to be truly seen and loved for who he was. On a quiet afternoon, a year after their wedding, Vincent found Marina in her studio at the apartment, working on a new canvas. "What are you painting?" he asked, embracing her from behind. Marina smiled, stepping aside so he could see. It was a view of the Artisan Cafe, but with one significant difference. On the terrace tables, several people with various marks and scars were chatting and smiling, completely at ease in their own skin. "It's for the new headquarters of the foundation," she explained, "to remember where it all began and show where we're going." Vincent kissed her forehead, admiring how she could turn memories into art and art into hope. "You know," Marina said, cleaning her brushes, "I think I finally understand why we met at that cafe." "Why?" "Because sometimes love doesn't need touch-ups or corrections. Sometimes it just needs the right gaze to reveal the beauty that was always there." Vincent smiled, his scars shifting with the expression of genuine happiness. Outside, New York pulsed in its frenetic rhythm, but there, in the space they had created together, time flowed to the beat of their synchronized heartbeats, painting the future with the colors of true love.